Hello and welcome again to the Prado Museum for another of our weekly sessions in English that are made possible with the support of the members of the nonprofit organization, the American Friends of the Prado Museum. The painting that we're going to be seeing today is one of the treasures of the Prado's Flemish collection. This comes from the workshop of the Van Eyck brothers, of Jan van Eyck and Hubert van Eyck, and it's full of all of the subtle, hidden symbolism, all of the wonderful little details that the Van Eycks are so famous for. And recent research shows that there are so many stories here and so many that we are still discovering today. So we have a lot to talk about and we have a lot to see in this painting. The subject of the painting is the fountain of grace. This is the grace of God. The grace of God refers to the promise of the gift of God's divine presence that He brings to humanity and that brings humanity the possibility of existence beyond earthly life. And that is expressed here in the metaphor of a fountain, and that people can only partake in this defeat of our mortal life through the Eucharist. And the Eucharist is the host or the bread that Catholics to believe to be the body of Christ. And so that's what this painting is really about. It's about the Eucharist and the triumph of the Eucharist over mortality. So we have the water that is filled with host, that is flowing down in the water through this fountain where humankind can receive it. And as we'll see in a few minutes, not all of humankind receives the host exactly the same way. And if we look at the top, we'll see where the source of the fountain is, because it's right underneath this throne that God the Father is sitting on top of. And God is seated on the throne as King of Heaven, as King of celestial Jerusalem. And next to him, we have the Virgin Mary and St. John the Evangelist. And this composition here might also remind us of the Ghent altarpiece by the Van Eycks as well. We can tell that God is represented as the king because he has a scepter in his hand and because he's sitting in a throne. And if we look at the details of the throne, we can see the four evangelists, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, that are represented as the angel, the lion, the ox, and the eagle. And right in front of God, we have the sacrificial lamb, the lamb which is, of course, a reference to Jesus. And God is sitting in this elaborate construction, this grand construction that is in the Gothic style. And this reminds us of a monstrance. And a monstrance is what would be used to hold the Eucharist in a Catholic Mass. And so this is a monstrance here, if you're not familiar with what that is. And then the host would go right in the middle. And so we can see how the Gothic architecture here is holding the Eucharist kind of in the same way that the monstrance would be holding the Eucharist in the church. And there are so many details, we won't even be able to get to all of them, but if we look at all of the details in the tiles of the floor, one of them even has an inscription on it that historians have found to say Agla. And Agla is an acronym for a Hebrew phrase which means, "Thou art great forever, my Lord." Like I said, these paintings can be discovered and rediscovered for centuries. So the water flows down, and as it flows down, we see that it passes through this area that's like this lush garden with all of these different types of plants. There are over 20 different types of plants here that have been identified. And we have angels here that are playing music, angel musicians. Some of them are playing music, some of them are singing. And on the side where they're singing, one of them is holding this inscription, this phylactery. And on that phylactery, there's a phrase that comes from the Bible, from the biblical book, the Song of Songs, that says, "Fountain of the dead, well of living waters." And this, of course, is referring to the fountain that we're seeing in the painting, and also juxtaposes this idea of life and death, earthly mortal life, and heavenly immortality. And we can see that the angels are also looking down. So they're singing and they're directing this message to the humanity that's receiving all of the water and the host that's coming in the water through the fountain of grace. And we see that there's two different groups of people here, and they're receiving this message in a very different way. On this side, we have the group that represents Christianity, and we can see that there is a bishop there, that there's a king, that there's a pope, and the pope is actually pointing to the fountain. He's showing the fountain, and all of these people are attentive and they're listening to the message that the pope is giving. We could just get lost in all of the little details here. They're absolutely exquisite. And then on the other side, we have a group of people that represents Judaism. And how do we know that they represent Judaism? Because we have all of these letters that are Hebrew letters. And this group is very different. They're handling this message in a very different way. They're blindfolded, they're covering their ears, they look like this confused, jumbled mess. And the inscription here, the interesting thing is that although these are Hebrew letters, this is entirely unintelligible. This is nonsensical. This is gibberish, which is really interesting because there is somebody from the 15th century that wrote ideas that are really specifically expressed in this painting, like blind text, and that's Alonso de Cartagena. Alonso de Cartagena was a bishop from about this same time period, and it happens to be that he was the son of conversos. He was the son of Jews who had converted to Christianity. And so knowing that, and knowing that recent research has possibly linked him to the commission of this painting, well, all of this takes on a whole new, acquires a whole new meaning as well. And then if we look at the fountain here, where all of the host has fallen, we can also think that it might also look like a baptismal font. So thank you for joining me to spend just a few minutes with this painting that is so rich in symbolism and in meaning that it's hard to get into just 10 minutes, and we'll see you again next Wednesday.